I am
Hello.
so excited to have you on the pod.
Oh,
Welcome.
thanks, Nick. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. I've been really thinking about, this recording all day. So, I thought what would be a great way to start is to introduce you to everyone and so to kind of talk a little bit about, your career path and your journey at first. So just so everybody knows, Patek is an owning board member. Has been so for the last couple of years, and she's based in London. But I'm going to take that and hand it over to you. So,
All right.
what have you done in your career that brought you to this point?
Oh, yes. What brought me here is my curiosity, I would say. I think that's what shaped my career. But I'm a telco girl. I started my career in the mobile industry. So I'll start from the back and just walk my way through to the present time. I started my career in the mobile industry in the earlier days when the 3G networks were being launched. So that's where I
Right.
started. I worked for Orange. I was part of the 3G rollout team. So I was an engineer. That's how I
Yeah.
started. And then I worked in the mobile industry pretty much more than half of my career, I would say. It was always on the mobile front, start with 3G and then move to 4G. And then it was completely unexpected and unplanned that I changed industries. And that is where I
Mm.
say my curiosity kind of shaped my career. I guess the primary driver for me always with my choices is, what can I learn more? And, how do I diversify my experience? So when I got contacted, I think it's over 8 years now, by one of the large American banks, I was like, why would a bank call me? I had no idea. I build mobile networks. So out of curiosity, I decided to meet them. And then I discovered a completely different world that I was just not familiar with. So
Mm.
much
Yeah.
transformation going on, a lot of great work. So I transitioned to this industry. And at the moment, up until start of this year, I continued being in the telco environment, more obviously focusing on the enterprise networks and contact center and voice services, all sorts of things that is relevant to large and international banks. And the start of this year, I decided again out of curiosity and keen to learn more and kind of diversify experiences, I decided to take on a journey with the service management team here. So I work for
Yeah.
HSBC. I've been with HSBC for 4 years now, just over 4 years. And since the start of this year, I'm heading up the service management team globally within the CTO function for technology. So it's an exciting time. There's a lot happening, and it's been really great so far.
Yeah. So tell me, what does one fabulous, and that's great. It's like I think people who have that career journey where they are on both sides of the equation, meaning that they work on the supply side and then also on the demand side, have a very unique perspective. And I think a really great perspective, probably better than any career path where you stay in one side or the other, because you get to see what drives demand, what is going to resonate on the demand side, and then also on the supply side you get to see lots of different companies and where they are in their journeys. So I think that having the confluence of those experiences, I think is majorly valuable, to both yourself and then and also really to anyone that you're working with and the people that you're interacting with. So it's
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And when I talk to the wider team, when they reach out to ask for advice and a bit of coaching, I always recommend to look for different opportunities, get new experiences. It was a big change in culture for me to shift from the telecom industry to where I am now. I mean, there's so much to learn, and there isn't a more exciting time, I would argue, to be in technology because of what's
Yeah.
happening out there, which I'm sure we're gonna touch on later on a little bit more. So it is really important to really seek for new opportunities, stay curious, and learn new things. And I think that is when you're learning, that journey becomes a bit more interesting, more exciting. It stretches you out of your comfort zone. And so I always say, try to search for new opportunities. Put your best. Do your best in your job, but then search for opportunities to kind of really broaden your perspective to things. And certainly, being in different camps in my career journey, I think I benefited hugely.
Yeah, awesome. So let's talk about service management. What is
Yeah.
it? what do you do there? You know, and
Yeah,
what's the
I do get
domain?
that question. Yeah, yeah.
What's
It
the
is. I
domain
mean,
space?
yes, yes. I mean, it's very broad and wide, right? So I get this question quite often when I speak to people who are not familiar with the practice. So I worked in the domain for a very long time. When I used to lead telecom, teams, it was pretty deep. We would be accountable over, let's say, for the networks and all the engineering and deployments, operations, everything from start to end. I guess with service management, you get a bit more broader perspective to running a technology organization. And it
Hmm.
helps you to put the customer at the core of everything that you do in a day-to-day basis. So we are really there to support the wider team in terms of their choices and how they deploy changes, how they respond to incidents, how they look at the problems after an incident recovers, how they identify any of the remedial actions that will help them to mitigate the recurrence of these incidents, and a number of other
Yeah.
things like service level management is one. We obviously have a commitment to the business to provide them a certain quality of service, and we make sure that we track that too. Really, in essence, what we do is we manage the processes and the controls for the banking technology by
Yeah.
putting the guardrails, by putting capabilities that will enable them to do their jobs more effectively. But the core of everything we do is all things relating to production stability and making sure that we're continuously investing in the operational resilience.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, great. Thank you so much for that. That is like so great. Because frankly, I know when you tell me that you're into service management, I'm like, okay, what is that? You know, so it's like it's actually, procedures and controls, and putting in guardrails, looking at kind of life cycle management, making sure that the infrastructure is reliable and stable, and that you can run the business, and that it's trusted by the business unit managers. This is how I'm now processing and thinking of that role.
Yeah,
Is that
yes,
right?
pretty much a nice way to summarize that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's super. So this is going to be really great discussion. So, all right. So good. So you mentioned a little bit about kind of it being one of the most exciting times. I'm so with you on that. And it's interesting. Like this morning, I was kind of getting ready for my opening remarks at the summit coming up in New York. And so one half of it is all focused about kind of where we are around with AI. And so there's a lot of technology being coming at us at speed and also at scale. Then we did polling of the community back in spring and also just recently in fall, asking kind of like taking their temperature about where they are in consumption and their concerns and so forth. And you see a very different picture. You see, on the supplier side, you see a lot of excitement, a lot of, new technologies. And, I don't mean to use hype in a pejorative, but there's a lot of hype there. Then when you kind of poll the community, there's excitement, but there's also balance and caution with everything else, that they're doing. And so, looking through those poll results today, I was like so gun ho before, and I went through that. And I'm like, okay, there is a gap, here. So let's see if that's true in your experience. So let's first start with how AI you view AI impacting the financial services market. So just a little caveat: we know that within our community, there is a lot of AI infrastructure being built within the banking system for fraud detection. We know that that's probably the number one use case, but there may be others. So, but you might have other views on how it's impacting financial services. So, what's your view?
Yeah, I think it's impacting everyone, not just my industry, right? So everybody, wherever you turn, you hear AI these days. And the balance that you talk about, I think it's the right balance. It has to be that way. So in the supplier front, it's great that there's so much investment and excitement about it because that's how you fuel the innovation that will come out from this industry, right? Whereas when you look at enterprises, it is more around having the feet on the ground and being,
Yeah.
okay, how can we make this happen practically, right? So we need to be very cautious. I think I am very optimistic about the future with AI. I do believe that we're going to serve our customers better, faster, safer, all sorts of, positive things. But there's a lot of unknowns, right? So the unknowns is, there's going to be new problems that will emerge. as we deep dive
Yeah.
into this new capability. But I would also argue that it is not so new, right? What is new is probably more around the generative AI. But when you look
Hmm.
at AI, the industry has been using AI for a very long time. I mean, fraud detection you reference to, not only our front office, but also in the back office, we use that quite extensively. If I reference to my previous role, we were working with our partners, developing things like virtual engineers, and, how do we automate some of the responses? Some of the work around the AI ML has been there for a long time. And I think
Yeah.
we have much more comfort with the AI in ML. I think where the cautiousness is with the generative AI, right? So with the deep learning, and you don't know what you don't know, and therefore there's more consciousness. Then also, if you consider industries like ours, we are heavily regulated. And
Right.
we're in the business of trust as well. We're looking after people's money, right? So you need to be very aware of the risks as you step into new territories. We have
Yeah.
seen throughout our career lots of new technologies emerge, and we learned a lot. And one thing that we probably learned is that there's going to be problems that we will discover along the way. It's great to have all that excitement, but something will pull you down on the ground, so that you kind of are realistic with the expectations, right? So that healthy balance will happen. And on the other hand, also there are other considerations with AI with regards to legal and regulatory frameworks out there that is still developing as well, right? So at the moment, when I look to my industry, I think there's a lot of excitement. Everybody wants to get on it, but we're kind of looking at it from a much more risk kind of conscious way to really assess
Yeah.
every single scenario. I think what is really important is to narrow down the individual problems that we want to address, right? So how do we approach addressing those things, being very conscious of the risks that may arise as well. So I think that the imbalance that you're referring to is a natural one and it's the right one. But
Yeah.
I think it's normal that the banks or any other regulated industries will probably have a slower response to it because we need to be very careful with some of the decisions.
Yeah, no, very insightful, and you're right. So actually, you made me feel better. It's like, okay, that's right. This gap is normal.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
it is healthy. As well. It was interesting. Too, that there was some discussion around the whole reliability and trust, really came out loud and clear. And skills or lack thereof, came out loud and clear, which I kind of put all in that same kind of category. Is that one, can you trust it? Can you build reliability? Can there be reliability within it? Do you have the skills, within organizations to not only just evaluate but deploy and manage and oversight, these kinds of new systems or the AI enablement, of existing systems, as well. So I think all of those are kind of like how people are now starting to process. Okay, great. I see the value. I see the promise. But I have to get over some of these, these constraints that I'm seeing. So I think so. Anyway, that was very helpful. Thank you. Thank you for Protect. So
yeah.
let's talk a little bit about. Go ahead. You had something.
No, I was just going to say that, I think in terms of the skills, I think it's quite important that the skills that we refer to in the context of AI is not limited to our engineers. I think we need to educate bottom up everyone around the business. I think this is going to be hugely transformational. But again, as I said, the unknowns are there. And therefore, how do we manage that risk? What are the right control frames we need to put in place to manage those risks as well? So in order to be able to make the right decisions, I think it's very important that everyone, regardless of their engineering role or any other roles across the enterprises, they will need quite a bit of an education. I think the more informed we are, the better decisions we will make. And
Yeah.
naturally, trust will also be in a much better space in terms of our approach to how we adopt these new technologies.
Yeah. Awesome. So I think on the adoption, so you mentioned kind of both kind of front end, being able to take care of customers better, and then also on the back end. Let's talk a little bit about the back end. So every corporation has a series of back end systems, which usually the CIO is really concerned about, right? So these are system of records. There are large ecosystems of system of records for HR, for finance, for manufacturing, for customer support, on and on. all of those systems over the last 30, maybe 40 years were built as kind of deterministic, meaning that they get inputs, from, individuals, or maybe they're able to kind of capture inputs from other sources. And there are reports, and those reports are kind of predetermined, right? And so every company gets to see the same kinds of reports, but it's going to be tailored towards your particular enterprise. The movement, around a lot of these companies that, develop, a kind of system of record. So like if it's in sales, it might be like Oracle as an example, or HubSpot. Um, a lot of that movement now is starting to think about, okay, well, how can we make these more predictive? And so with AI, so that these system of record systems, now they'll get input from lots of different sources and automated inputs from lots of different sources, and then it's the culmination, of all of those systems into a kind of digital twin of your organization, where executive management could be thinking of different strategies, and now actually have a predictive model on how the organization, how customers may adopt or not adopt, these particular scenarios. So, have you been thinking at all about that, or has HSBC been thinking about, how system of records will be transformed over this next business cycle, next 3 to 5 years? And your role, like around guardrails, has got to be like kind of right in the center of that, as
Yeah,
well. But
yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it's happening, right? I mean, at the moment, everybody's looking at the opportunities to become much more predictive and proactive in terms of how they process any information out there. Maybe I can refer to the system of records that's a little bit more within my domain in service
okay, please,
management.
yeah.
We do use a lot of capabilities from the inventories to, service management tools like ServiceNow, and processing the data within there in a large scale organization like mine is complex. When you think about an organization that operates across 60 different markets with so many millions of customers, and a huge organization that relies on these systems, being able to become much more efficient in the way we assess the data that goes into these platforms is complex. We certainly are looking at how do we extract more meaningful insights from this environment. And one of the examples I could perhaps give is with regards to problem records. After we have recoveries from incidents, typically any organization does that. This is not unique to mine. Is that they would have their incident reviews, and they come up with the remedial actions. Everything gets recorded, but it is a very transactional, on a one incident per one incident kind of basis, right? Whereas if you want to become much more strategic decisions, really understand your problems, you need something a bit more capable than human making sense out of these records, right? So, and
Hmm.
therefore, how do you leverage AI in this context? How do you actually extract more meaningful insights? But I think in order for that to happen first, the data quality that goes in there needs to be also in the right place. So what are the quality rules that you want to, data quality rules that you would need to ensure that these systems hold? And what are the tools that you're going to use to make sure that that is at the quality that you need to have? Because as they say, garbage in, garbage out otherwise, right? So you need to build your data. I think
Um,
when I think about the service management, one of the key areas that I'm focusing right now, if you think about the large scale environment and the complex environment that we're operating in, and just to kind of really uh, talk about what I mean by the complexity, we are a large organization, and enterprises like this face the similar sort of challenges. So many different data centers, whether we host things on-prem or we have things in the cloud. We have SaaS providers. The environment is very, very complex, right? So in order to be able to establish that foundation, how do you make sure that you have a common service data model within the system? And therefore, you're able to put the context in order to be able to leverage the AI in a much more meaningful and reliable and credible way. So I think a lot of the tools from an operational perspective, at least when I talk about service management, the data foundation needs getting stronger and stronger in order for the AI capabilities to become much more meaningful and really predictive as well in terms of the analysis that you would do. So foundations are important, and then you can build on top of the AI capabilities that will give you a large scale interpretation of what you're seeing within the data records. This will allow you to understand the common themes. What are the underlying issues that we probably need to strategically make much more conscious decision to make investments in. So I think there's a lot to explore there. Again,
Yeah.
in the space that I own in my current role with service management, so many changes happen into our production environment. We're coming
Mm.
close to 1 million changes this year. So if you look at my
Mm.
environment, so that's a lot of change records to review. And how do you
Yeah.
assess the risk? And how do you make these quality checks across these change records to make sure that what goes into production goes in safely? So we are at the moment, for example, looking at using things like ChatGPT and how do we actually improve the quality of the change records. So I think the value add is there with AI and some of the generative AI type of capabilities, but really the foundation is the data quality. What goes in there, your ability to be able to monitor that and observe that and make sure that that is solid, so that you can really take advantage of this data at the large scale that you're operating in.
Yeah, that's so insightful. The whole data governance and understanding kind of the data that's actually going into these systems. I'm sure that's not just pertinent to like service management, but every system of record that's out there. And I think like once you can get, and that's a non-trivial issue, around data governance. But if we can kind of imagine ourselves past that, then the question, the real, I think, power is really around not just one incident and review, but it's to be able to review, like you have 1 million incidences a year, so like what are the patterns across that million?
No,
What
no,
are some of the
we don't have
strategies?
million incidents. I want to correct. We have million
Okay,
changes
thank
that
you.
go into production.
Oh, changes. Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you. Very
Changes.
important. Very important note.
Yeah, very important point
Yeah.
to correct. Sorry.
Thank you. No, thank you very much for that. Yeah. So you have 1 million that you have to look across to try to understand, maybe either root cause or to be able to put in mitigation strategies to mitigate not just one, but like a whole range of them. So, categorize them, create signatures for them, and deploy strategies. So anyway, thank you for that correction. That was that important, important safety note. Okay. Okay, great. So data in around governance, and then really then AI can actually do its magic, on the other side of that, and provide a lot of value to the organization. Okay. Challenges. I think we already talked about challenges. So the challenges really around governance, and I think also you mentioned skills. But do you want to explain a little bit more about what you mean by skills, and and getting what we need to do there around kind of a workforce?
Yeah, I was touching on the skills front. Certainly, the education is needed bottom up, not just for the engineers, right, across the wider organization, from the those that are accountable over some of the enterprise risk management, our controls and risks, other parts of the organization. So I think it's really important for educating the wider workforce for all things relating to AI, so that they can assess any potential risk from their perspectives. A lot of our engineers have been on that journey already, so the education is there, and they're doing a lot of work and pilots around some of the exciting stuff that's happening, such as software developer augmentation piece with Copilot, and quite a few thousand software developers now using that, and really creating those communities to learn from each other as well. So there's a lot of things you can do within the bank, but also learn from the peers, from the industry. Places like ONOC is a great example of that. When you bring all that community together, how we can actually approach these challenges as a collective, thought leaders, and really help learn from each other. I think what ONOC is doing in that context is remarkable. Really creates a platform where the industry can get together and learn from each other as well. So there's so many things that you can do, but education definitely, but not limiting to the engineering teams.
Yeah, no, that's great, and yeah, you're right. Like actually, I'm really excited about the fall summit. It's like we're gonna have there are like 68 sessions, and about 30 of them are what called triple T's. So these are either an AI tool, a technique, or a technology. So a lot of consumers, engineers can now interact with, play with a wide range of AI agents, co-pilots, various different AI tools, understand what new AI native products are, and see what value that they may bring to the infrastructure as well. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. Thanks for mentioning. Thanks for mentioning that. And
And
I
I
think
think
the
it
other
is
thing we did.
really.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just gonna add, Nick. I mean, I think you have a really strong platform where you bring the industry together, and we typically get excited about the shiny new technologies, and we talk about the positive things. But I think it's really important as you have industry leaders, thought leaders come together. Consider what are the new problems that may emerge that we may want to get together in advance to really speculate a little bit maybe, but scenario planning, if that makes sense. In my job in
Yeah,
service management, we do a lot of scenario planning in terms of what could go wrong, typically in a
yeah.
production environment. And with the same mindset, I think it's really important to also consider what could be a problem that we don't have today with the current environments that it may become, and therefore, what are the approaches that we may need to consider in order to tackle them sooner than later.
That's so insightful. It's interesting because it reminds me we have Vince Cerf, who's doing an opening for us at the summit, and Vint mentions that his biggest, I wouldn't say failure, but it's his biggest concern, or maybe he would kind of wish that it didn't happen, was their lack of focus on security when they were first doing TCP/IP protocols on the internet. And that it opened up. They just couldn't imagine that people would just want to take advantage of this, and exploit something that could be just so good. So I think that's so those kinds of scenarios and problem scenarios is really helpful. I'm sure we're going to get to that, but I think maybe in the springtime it might be better to kind of like
Yeah,
have a focus on that. But actually, we're going to be in London, so maybe we should do something, a session on that in London, as well. That could be.
indeed.
But anyway, yeah,
I think.
that's yeah. I'm
Yeah, I
very
was just going to say that's
cognizant.
a really. Sorry, I'm speaking over you. I'll let you finish.
I will always bow to you, Patek. Go ahead.
Well,
Hmm.
what I was going to say, I think that's exactly the right thing I had in mind. Cybersecurity risks, right? So the good guys and girls tend to have the rules. They are very conscious of risks. They want to do it properly and safely, and we approach it. The bad ones, they don't have any rules, right? So how do we actually prepare ourselves well and establish the right balance there? I think it would be an interesting topic to explore with some of your summits coming up.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, perfect. So let's think a little bit about maybe just two things. One, I think I just remembered. So just on the skill set, the other thing that we did that we're starting at this summit is we launched a continued professional development program. What we found, from talking to a bunch of other board members, is that many organizations have professional accreditations organizations that provide accreditations for employees. I'm sure HSBC has a program, Bank of America has a program, Citi, Pfizer, J&J, many others do. And so to get additional professional education credits, they can actually use the hours they spend at ONUG or at the summit, and apply for those to be towards credit, or apply those credits towards continuing education. So we're actually launching that in the fall timeframe, where you can we'll make it easy for anyone who wants to do that. They'll get both micro badges, and they'll also be able to submit to those kind of accreditation organizations the hours that they spent, where they spent those hours, what the outcome of those hours were, so they can get more professional accreditation around AI networking and also around AI cybersecurity. So I wanted to just mention that, because it falls right into the whole skill set and collaborative nature that we have within the community. So anyway, so wanted to get that out, but let's kind of pick back up around some of the challenges, especially around ROI. There seems to be maybe two schools of thought, and I think we know where we're gonna land on this one. There is the school of thought where, hey, this is a new platform. You can't be left behind. We're adding intelligence to everything that we do. It is going to create tremendous productivity dividends. It's going to create tremendous business value creation, and we have to invest in that. That's one school of thought. So it's almost like blindly investing and hoping that there's going to be a big score. And then there's the other point of view, which is a more traditional enterprise point of view, and that is we're going to focus on ROI, and and utilize our maybe our existing ROI metrics, whether that's 2 years, 3 years, or what have you, to pick where we're going to make these investments and how we're going to progress. What's your view? Where do you kind of see not just HSBC, but like the industry, the consumer side of the industry, in general?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think certainly, these new technologies and with AI in mind, there will be a lot of productivity and efficiency for sure. The ultimate excitement comes from the fact that it will be better and faster, right? So there's certainly an expectation that efficiency will be there. But at the same time, probably it's going to create other new opportunities as well. So you don't know where you kind of create the gap, what will replace it, right? So if you're saving something from somewhere, maybe other opportunities will arise as well. We will certainly be able to serve our customers much better as well. So there's going to be a return on the investment from that perspective as well, because you're able to do that much faster and provide better services, and therefore the return is going to be there for sure. But in terms of being specific, I think there's still yet things to be clarified, because the cost of running AI probably is not going to be that attractive either. So I think we will need to see on a case by case basis. It is really difficult to make a judgment on a more broad sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make perfect sense. Yeah, the customer service side of it is like really key. It's like where my mind immediately goes to is contact centers. Also, it's when I try to interact with my bank. So I bank with Morgan Stanley. So sorry, Morgan Stanley with UBS, Bank of America. So we have three banks. That we work with. Um, I think their websites are all pretty good. The mobile apps are all, pretty good. But if I ever need to like talk to someone, that's like a nightmare. So it's like, so being able to mitigate a lot of the kind of voice prompts and trees to get to someone, I think is a huge, huge help there. I think also, so I'm not quite sure when you're thinking about customer service, and customer experience, like what are you thinking of? Where do you see that there will be a really great advantage?
There are lots of opportunities, right, with how we can leverage these technologies. I think knowing your customer experience and really drilling down to some of the underlying challenges is where you need to start. What is the problem that you're trying to fix? I think with technologies like this, we get really excited and we want to go big bang, but I think we need to really narrow it down to specific problems that we're seeing. The problem might be the interaction issue. What are the touch points of a customer, and what does the experience of that customer look like, and what are the improvements you may want to drive. It could be maybe you want to tighten up some of the security aspects, because the world out there is getting crazier as we speak. So maybe you want to kind of invest in that space as well to make sure that you're safe, you're able to serve your customers much better. Maybe some of the response rates are not fast enough, and therefore maybe you want to improve that. So I think with technologies like that, being also risk conscious as well, you need to really narrow it down to specific problems. But that can only
Mm,
come from really understanding your customer and really
mm.
understanding their experiences, and therefore be able to translate into specific problems that you want to go after and see what really improves their experience. So I mean, that is the only way I think we can really tackle some of the challenges like this.
Yeah, very practical approach. Thank you for that. So let's think a little bit. I think kind of trying to like land the plane on the pod. Vision. You know, how do you think this will roll out in the next couple of years? So, do you have a vision of how AI might impact financial services? In other industries, like over the next 5 years? Like, what's your maybe view or hope? On the journey that we're all on.
I think having a vision or a view for the really wide industry is a big one to go after. I will respond to that. I think there's going to be a lot of great improvements that we will all see in our respective domains. When I think about my space, if I may just zoom into that, going back to the cutting your problems into smaller pieces and really focus on that one, I think in the service management space it's going to be definitely revolutionary. But there are foundations that we need to build before we can really take advantage of what we can accomplish. I think in the longer run, I don't know if it's 5 year or a little bit longer. It all kind of time will show, I guess. But it's going to be a much more, predictive, much more proactive, much more autonomous service management capabilities that is going to be there. I think in the speed in which we respond to events and problems is going to be in a different place. Some of the investments that we're doing now, I briefly touched on the common service data model and making sure that we sort out the context that AI need to operate in. We're also doing some work around open telemetry, and that is really the almost like your sensor layer. And when you have that two foundation, you build the AI on top. I think there's a lot of opportunities there in terms of how you can enable a much more autonomous environment. So my vision is really, how do we get there? How do we
Mm.
enable a much more proactive, much more predictive environment where you can create that autonomy and really leverage some of the, efficiencies that we can get in the speed in which we respond to events that we see within production environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell you, Patek, you're so like, grounded. You just like you really kind of understand. You don't kind of just jump to like, some nirvana. You kind of the paths, that you have to go to get there, which is extremely, important and refreshing. And I'm sure like, is going to resonate with a lot of folks as they're kind of listening, on this. So I think maybe the one thing that I walk away with, in terms of like, your vision, especially on the service management, is that it's something that's a little bit more autonomous. Once you put the foundational, especially around the data foundational pieces in place, something that might be a little bit more autonomous, kind of predictive, kind of operating model, and that might hold true for like all the other systems of record, as well. I'm sure like everyone who's responsible for these kind of domains are thinking the same lines, right? It's not like they're basically systems with inputs and outputs, and you're looking for patterns within those outputs now and being able to leverage some really powerful technology to deal with those outputs, and then also to be able to mitigate things that might have gone astray. And that's gonna be piece by piece, problem by problem, as the industry progresses. That's kind of how I view your view. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I think probably because of the job I do, right? I mean, I deal with the day-to-day operational issues. So for me, it is very important to put customer experience at the core and then be very clear on my problem statements and use the new technologies to my advantage to see how I can better respond, how faster we can respond, and how we can become much more safer and efficient in the way we respond to events. So it's really
Mm,
always going back to the problem statement. What is it that we're gonna resolve, and for the customer, really at the core of everything, right?
awesome. Well, Patek, this was like great. This was like so much fun, so great to like spend the time with you and gain your insights as to like what's occurring right now in the industry. It's a really exciting time, and so the more voices that we have, into like where the journey is, I think the better the journey is going to be. So thank you so much for the time today.
Oh, thank you, Nick. It was really nice spending time with you. I look forward to catching up with you when you're in London as well, hopefully for the summit. Yes,
Cannot wait. Yeah,
and
I
then we
cannot
can
wait for
talk
that.
even more details at that point. But thank you very much. It was nice talking to you.
Perfect. Great. Thanks, Patek. Thank you everyone for plugging in as well.